Chicago, an afternoon in early May 2023. Rain was pouring down on the trees in front of the Cook County Courthouse. Among the crowd hurrying for cover, I clutched a folder to my chest that felt heavier than all my years of marriage. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I am 32 years old. The little girl snuggled on my shoulder is my daughter Clara. She had just turned 4 that day, too young to understand why her parents had walked into a room together and walked out no longer husband and wife. The folder held Clara's birth certificate, the uncontested divorce settlement agreement, child support set at $500 a month, and a bank statement showing a balance of $35,000. I squeezed it until my fingers went numb. Money can buy a place to sleep, but it can't give back the years I spent living like a shadow in my own home. Julian, my ex-husband, was the last to leave. He is 4 years older than me, a sales director for an electrical supply distribution company. Seeing his impeccable appearance, no one would have guessed he had just signed away his marriage. His phone kept lighting up with a name, Mackenzie. Julian looked at me with a tone as calm as if he were giving instructions to a delivery driver. Keep the papers safe. I'll transfer the child support as we agreed. He had said it in the courtroom, and he was repeating it to be clear. Some things have to be said a second time, usually because the first time, the speaker isn't sure they'll follow through. Julian frowned. For the last few years, whenever he got upset, I used to stay quiet. I thought that if one person in a marriage gave in, the house would have fewer storms. I later understood that giving in to keep the peace is very different from giving in to the point where the other person gets used to having the right to hurt you. When we got married, I was an administrative assistant at a furniture company. After Clara was born, she was often sick, and our parents lived far away. Julian told me to quit my job for a few years to take care of her. He once took my hands and said sweetly, "Stay home and take care of the baby. I'll earn money to support you both." I believed him. But from the day I no longer had a paycheck, the way he looked at me began to change. At the beginning of each month, Julian would leave the household expense money on the table and question every penny I spent. Once, Clara had a fever of almost 104. I grabbed her and took a taxi to the emergency room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in the middle of the night. I called him 5 times, and he didn't answer. When I returned in the morning, the first thing he asked was, "How much did that cost?" I hugged my daughter, filled with anger and sorrow. "You don't even ask how she is." Julian changed his shirt and answered with complete indifference. "I'm asking so I can budget the money. Besides, being at home all day, what are you so tired from? You just have to take care of the kid." He repeated that phrase to me so many times that I started to wonder if I really was useless. It was enough for a shirt not to be ironed, for the food to have cooled down a bit, or for Clara to cry just as he arrived for everything to automatically become my fault. They say that rowing together can cross any sea, but if one person rows while the other stands in the boat criticizing how slow you're going, you'll burn out before you even reach the halfway point. I found out about Julian and Mackenzie from a hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. At first, he said it was for work with a client. Then I saw the text messages reserving a bouquet of roses on the same day as Mackenzie's birthday. For my birthday, 2 weeks earlier, he just zelled me some money with the message, "Buy yourself whatever you want." That night, waiting for Clara to fall asleep, I shoved the phone in my husband's face. "How long have you two been together?" Julian looked at the screen for a few seconds, without being startled or denying it. "Since you know, let's be clear. I'm sick of coming home and always seeing you with a frown on your face." I let out a laugh of pure pain. "The baby is sick. You don't show up. I spend the night wide awake. And you say I'm frowning? Dinner gets cold because I'm waiting for you, and you say the house is suffocating? So, you cheating on me is also my fault." Julian leaned back in his chair. "I don't feel anything anymore." "You keep the kid. I'll send you the money. Don't make a scene. We'll both look ridiculous." There was a time when I would have waited for an apology from him, at least one sentence. But he spoke of our marriage as if he were liquidating old junk. The parts are divided, and everyone goes home. That's why I didn't argue on the day of the hearing. The $35,000 was recorded as a settlement of assets and initial support for us to get established. The $500 monthly payment was his exclusive obligation to Clara, to be transferred before the 5th of each month. I read every line and reviewed everything. I no longer believed in his "I'll take care of it," because that was the same phrase that made me give up my job, my income, and my youth. The rain still hadn't stopped. Julian opened his black umbrella and looked at the child. "Come on, Clara. Daddy will take you to the car." The little girl clung to my neck and turned her face away. Julian tensed up a bit. Don't say things to make her hate me. I felt a shiver. Don't worry. I don't need to teach her to hate her father. Children remember who is there for them when they need it. The phone vibrated again. Julian answered and took a few steps away. His voice suddenly became soft, a sweetness I hadn't received in a long time. I'm done. Wait for me in the car. It's raining hard. I watched him walk away towards the vehicle parked across the street. Under the awning, an elderly woman looked at me and sighed. I don't know if she felt pity or simple curiosity to see how much an abandoned woman would cry, but I didn't cry. Clara placed her little hand on my cheek. Mommy, where is Daddy going? Daddy has things to do. Isn't he coming home with us? I swallowed the lump in my throat before answering. From now on, Daddy will live in another house. The little one blinked, watching the rainfall, and asked, So, where are we going? In my head, the image of the country house in Vance, Illinois, appeared with its potted plants on the patio, the smell of my mother's pot roast, and the oak tree under which my father used to drink his coffee. I still believed that no matter what happened in the world, a daughter could always return to her parents' house. I adjusted Clara's jacket and spoke to her in a firm voice. We're going to Grandma and Grandpa's house. I'm sure they'll love us very much there. Clara nodded and rested her head on my shoulder. I took my daughter, went down the courthouse steps, and walked directly into the rain. At that moment, I didn't yet know that of the sentence I had just spoken, the word that would hurt me the most later would not be grandparents, but the word sure. The Greyhound bus left the station as the rain began to subside. I was sitting by the window with one arm around Clara and the folder at my feet. The little girl dozed, clutching my sweater. I told myself that everything would be easier once I got home. From the small bus stop in the Illinois town to my parents' house was barely 2 miles. The country road shone with puddles. A landscape so familiar it almost made me forget I was returning in the position of a divorced woman. The brick house was still the same. On the patio were the potted plants my father, Thomas, under the covered porch, and from the kitchen came the smell of stew. As soon as I got out of the taxi, Rose, my mother, came out of the house. She looked at me, then at Clara, and finally fixed her eyes on the suitcase. You're here. Her tone was not the same as when we came for Christmas. There was no hug, nor did she make a move towards her granddaughter. I tried to smile. Yes, we're here. Clara hid shyly behind my legs. My mother bent down to stroke her head. Do you remember Grandma? Yes. My father came out from the back of the patio, his pants stained with mud from being in the garden. He looked at me longer than my mother did. His lips moved as if he wanted to ask something, but in the end, he just took the suitcase. Come inside. It's cold out here. Hearing my father treat me with such kindness made my eyes sting. But at that moment, Ethan came out of his room. His hair was messy, and he had his phone in his hand. He looked at the suitcase and frowned. Are you moving back in for good? My mother scolded him under her breath. What kind of way is that to talk? Ethan shrugged. I'm just asking so I know. I use your room now for my tools and to sleep. If you're staying, where am I supposed to go? I answered calmly. Clara and I will only stay for a few days. Just leave your things in a corner, it's fine. Ethan said nothing more, but his grimace was clearer than words. Not half an hour later, Angie, the neighbor, had already come over to bring some bread. Pat, from the convenience store, also peeked in. The news of my divorce was spreading through the town. Angie looked me up and down. I heard your husband has a good job. How did you end up like this when everything was fine? Pat intervened. Young couples these days get heated up too quickly. Our parents used to fix their problems behind closed doors. My mother sighed with a tone between sadness and reproach. She's a grown woman. She doesn't listen to me when I talk to her either. With a single sentence, my mother made everyone understand that I hadn't known how to keep my husband. Angie lowered her voice. He has money, honey. Did he lay a hand on you? If not, to leave him. Something serious must have happened that you don't want to talk about. My hand paused as I poured water. Clara, sitting on the tiled floor, didn't understand everything, but she glanced at me. I smiled coldly. The matters of my marriage are already resolved. Now I'm only concerned about my daughter. Angie let out a forced laugh. Of course, you never know what goes on behind closed doors. I didn't respond. It seemed like understanding, but her eyes shone with pure curiosity. At dinner time, my mother placed a plate of pot roast and mashed potatoes on the table. She immediately scooped the largest portion of meat onto Ethan's plate. Eat up, son. You have your vocational classes tomorrow. Then she turned to me and pushed the bowl of potatoes closer. You eat too, don't just sit there. Since we were little, the best of everything in the house always went to Ethan. And I, being the older one, was supposed to just accept it. But that day, watching her fill his plate made a lump in my throat. Clara pointed to her uncle's plate. Mommy, I want more meat. Ethan pulled his plate away. I'm already eating this. I gave my daughter the rest of the meat on my plate. Here, have Mommy's. The little girl smiled immediately. Children only need a small bite to be happy. But sometimes it takes adults a lifetime to understand what it feels like to always be left in the background. After dinner, I helped my mother wash the dishes and clean the kitchen, trying to do everything very carefully, as if our presence were a nuisance. At night, my father was sitting on the patio. I had just put Clara to bed when he called me. Eleanor, come out and talk for a moment. I pulled a chair up in front of him. He looked at the dark patio, avoiding my eyes. The divorce and the money, how did you settle it? I got my share of the assets and an initial support of $35,000. Julian has to keep paying Clara's child support every month. My father nodded. Keep the money safe. Put it in a certificate of deposit for Clara and for when you need to rent something later. At that moment, my mother came out of the kitchen. Since you have that cash sitting there, you should lend some to the family. Your brother needs a new car for his internship. You can't just hoard it all. I looked at my mother. I've already put it in a secure account. That money is for Clara's future. My mother smiled, but her mouth was rigid. I'm just worried about you. Your head is a mess right now. If you listen to some smooth talker, you'll end up with nothing. I'm not giving my money to anyone, Mom. The atmosphere on the patio became heavy. My father intervened quickly. I was just asking. Anyway, if something happens to you, this house won't turn its back on you. My mother turned to him, speaking as if I were offending her. Don't tell me. Anyone would think I'm kicking her out. I forced a smile. I don't think that, but inside me, the first crack had formed. That night, I spread a blanket to sleep with Clara in the room that was once mine. On the wall, there were still the pencil marks from when I measured my height at 16, but the closet was now full of Ethan's tools, and the study corner was cluttered with cables and boxes. Clara turned and hugged my arm. Mommy, does Grandma love me? I stroked her hair. Of course she does. Grandma loves you very much. So, are we going to live here? I looked at the ceiling, peeling from time. I heard my mother close the kitchen door, my father cough on the patio, and Ethan laughing on the phone in the next room. I don't know yet, but for now, we're staying here. Clara closed her eyes peacefully, and I remained motionless for a long time, forcing myself to believe that those looks, those questions, and the piece of fish at dinner were nothing more than trifles. Some houses keep their roofs, their kitchens, and the titles of mom and dad intact. But for the one who returns, the same place is no longer there. At midnight, I woke up because Clara stirred. Her little hand was fumbling for the glass of water. She was thirsty but kept her eyes closed, calling me softly. I carefully freed my hand from her t-shirt. I got up and went to the kitchen. The house was so quiet that my footsteps echoed on the tiles. I was about to turn on the light when I heard my mother's voice from the living room. To think, not knowing how to keep a husband. Him with his house, his car, giving her money every month. And she just lets him run off with some floozy. My hand froze in midair. My father lowered his voice. She just got back. Stop dwelling on it. Is it only her fault? You always make excuses for her. He didn't hit her, he didn't drink, they didn't lack for food. What more did she want? When women get married, they have to be softer. If a man comes home from work and you always give him a sour face, who can stand it? I stood frozen behind the partition. My mother didn't know there were nights I spent wide awake with a sick child while my husband was in a hotel with another woman. What hurt most wasn't that she didn't know, but that she had never asked me. My father sighed. Well, she's still our daughter. What's done is done. Now we have to think about the two of them. My mother let out a dry laugh. Think with what? Before, Julian would come at Christmas and leave us some money. When your back hurt, he paid for your medicine. Now with the divorce, this house loses a good son-in-law. From the other room, Ethan's voice chimed in. It turned out he wasn't sleeping either. Well, Mom's right. Julian promised he'd get me into his company through a contact. Now that my sister has gotten all high and mighty, and he's marrying someone else, who's going to pay attention to us? My father grunted softly. You take care of your own studies and your job. Don't blame your sister. Ethan let out an ironic laugh. If I take care of it, where do you get the money for my next tuition? and my car is ready for the junkyard. I have to get to my internship. My sister has $35,000. If she gives a little to the family, it's not going to kill anyone. My mother lowered her voice. She's clinging to that bank account as if her life depended on it. This afternoon, I told her to help her brother out, and she got all defensive. Ethan replied, "Well, if she's not going to give up a dime, she can rent a place somewhere. That room is for my stuff, and now suddenly it's invaded." I had wished my mother would scold him, even with a single word, but her voice sounded colder than the afternoon rain. Honestly, if it weren't for the $35,000 bank account she has, I would have told her to find a place to live. This house isn't a shelter for abandoned women. I gripped the edge of the wall tightly. It turned out that the roof I had used to comfort my daughter was nothing more than a mathematical calculation. They didn't accept me for being their daughter, but because I carried a valuable bank account. My father was quiet for a moment and said, "What a mean streak you have talking like that. Mean streak? If she comes back here, we'll have to support her and her kid while Ethan is just starting out. How are we supposed to afford all this? She's dragging us down." I wanted to go out and ask why they thought I would ever beg them for money, but I remembered Clara sleeping, swallowed my words, drank some water, and went back to the room. Clara was lying with one little foot peeking out from under the blanket. I covered her and sat leaning against the headboard. I didn't cry until dawn. Some pains run so deep that tears can no longer flow. The next morning, my mother got up early to make puree for Clara. She served it in a little bowl with drawings, blew on it to cool it down, and called the child. "Come, have what Grandma made for you for breakfast." If I hadn't heard the conversation the night before, I would have believed my mother was just clumsy with words, not with her heart. Clara was eating and telling her, "Grandma, last night I dreamed we had a slide." My mother smiled at her and then turned to me. "Eleanor, you need to rethink about lending some of that money. Ethan really needs help to get on his feet. We can write up a paper if you don't trust us." I put down my glass of water. I already have it in a CD. If I take it out now, I'll be penalized. "I can manage my own finances, Mom. I'm just asking for a family loan." "Why are you so defensive?" "I know what you're asking, but I need that money for Clara's future." My mother frowned. "Always with Clara on your lips. Aren't your parents and your brother, your family, or what?" "I didn't say that. When you really need something, I'll help in any way I can, but I'm not giving this account to anyone to manage for me." Ethan came in from the patio, heard the last sentence, and let out a laugh. "You'd think there are thieves in this house, sister. You have a few bucks and you're already talking differently, huh?" He pulled up a chair and grabbed a piece of toast. "Living off charity and hiding your money. If it weren't for that bank account, let's see who would put up with you for long." The kitchen went cold. My mother yelled at him to cover up. "Speak properly." But the sentence had already fallen right in front of Clara. The little girl stopped chewing, looked at her uncle, and then at me. "Mommy, what is charity?" She pulled on my sleeve. "Are we moochers, Mommy? If we run out of money, will Grandma kick us out?" Ethan ate, looking at his plate as if nothing was happening. My mother, nervous, served more puree. "Children don't know what they're saying. Eat, sweetie." But Clara wouldn't open her mouth. She just looked at me, waiting for an answer. I took her in my arms. "No one is going to treat us like we're mooching. Do you hear me?" "So, is this our house, Mommy?" I fell silent. A 4-year-old girl doesn't understand collateral or dignity. She just needs to know if the place where she sleeps is a place where they truly love her. I could have swallowed my mother's words from behind the partition and ignored my brother's insolence. But I couldn't let my daughter grow up seeing me bow my head to beg for a place to sleep. They say blood is thicker than water, but if family only remembers you when they see money, sometimes the water from strangers is much cleaner. Throughout that day, I didn't argue. I helped my mother wash vegetables, hung the laundry, cleaned the furniture. I also didn't tell my father what I heard. He loved me, but his affection was too weak to shield me from my mother's words and Ethan's disrespect. As night fell, I put Clara to bed early. She curled up next to me, as if afraid that if she let go, this place would also disappear. I looked at my daughter's face in the lamplight and suddenly felt a strange calm. I no longer waited for anyone to give me permission to stay. As dawn approached, when the first roosters in the town crowed, I got up, pulled the suitcase from under the bed, and opened the old closet. I folded the clothes very slowly, afraid the sound of the zipper would wake Clara. All our possessions fit into one small suitcase. Some clothes, a few cartons of milk, Tylenol, her faded stuffed rabbit, and the blanket she always hugged at night. I put the birth certificate, the divorce decree, my ID, and the bank account for the $35,000 in a waterproof pouch. Outside on the patio, the cool morning wind was blowing. I dragged the suitcase to the living room and stopped in front of my parents' door. Light filtered through the crack. I heard my father cough weakly and my mother turn over in bed. I just had to knock on the door, and maybe she would ask me to stay. I even raised my hand, but Clara's question echoed in my head. "Mommy, if we run out of money, will Grandma kick us out?" I lowered my hand. "Some doors, if opened only to beg for pity, are better left closed, and you should walk on your own 2 feet." I went in to get Clara. The little girl rubbed her face against my neck. "Mommy, where are we going?" "We're going to find a new house. The sun isn't up yet. We'll go early so it's not too hot." Clara hugged her stuffed animal, let me put on her jacket, and I carried her out. As I opened the gate, the hinges creaked. I stood still for a few seconds, but the house remained silent. I left the spare key on the windowsill next to the geranium pot. I didn't leave a note. At the end of the street, the town's old taxi driver was already waiting for me. He helped me with the suitcase and asked, "To the bus station?" "Yes. Take me to the bus to Chicago." The car rolled along the damp country road. I looked back once. The familiar roof disappeared behind the fence and was lost from view. When we arrived at the stop, the sky was beginning to lighten. I bought a smoothie for Clara and had a hot coffee. "Mommy, does Grandma know we left?" "She'll find out later." "Will she be sad?" "Maybe." "Then why didn't we say goodbye?" I stroked her hair. I was afraid of waking her up. "When we're settled, I'll call her." The bus arrived around 6 a.m. I chose 2 seats by the window, put the folder at my feet, and slipped the handle over my wrist. As the bus left the Illinois countryside behind, covered in a thin fog, my phone vibrated. It was my father. "Eleanor, where did you go?" "I'm taking Clara to Chicago to find a place. I'll let you know what happens." "Why did you leave without saying goodbye?" I swallowed hard. I was afraid that if I spoke, I wouldn't be able to leave. He was silent for a moment. "I know your mother has a sharp tongue. I'll talk to Ethan. Come back. The child is too young to live in a rental. You'll have a hard time." I looked at my daughter, who was resting her head on my shoulder. "Dad, I'd rather have a hard time than have my daughter grow up thinking we're a burden." "No one thinks that." He still didn't know everything I had heard behind the wall. I knew he loved me, but every time my mother or my brother hurt me, he just said to let it go. "I've let too many things go. Take care of your health. When we're settled, I'll bring Clara to see you." My mother snatched the phone from him. "Eleanor, what are you doing? I say 2 things to you and you run off with the child. When they find out, the neighbors will laugh at us." My heart went completely cold. "You're worried about people laughing. I'm worried about Clara hearing things she shouldn't hear. No one kicked you out of here. You don't have to say the word out to kick someone out, Mom." She was speechless. I didn't take anything from the house. I left the key at the door. "When we're settled, I'll call." I hung up. My hand was shaking so much I almost dropped the phone. Clara looked at me. "Was Grandma scolding you?" "She was just worried." She touched my cheek. "Don't cry, Mommy." I wiped my tears quickly. "I'm not crying." The wind got in my eye. She tilted her head. "But if the windows are closed, how can the wind get in?" I let out a laugh through my tears. "You're so smart. You caught my lie." During the trip, I called 2 friends. One lived with her in-laws, so it wasn't a good idea to stay there. The other advised me, "Eleanor, raising a child alone is very hard. Put up with what your mother says for a little while. Better to have a roof over your head than nothing." I thanked her and hung up. If having a roof means having to measure every look at dinner, if every time you fall asleep you have to remember you're there on sufferance, then that roof protects you from the rain, but it doesn't protect your dignity. I looked for Connie's number, the landlady of the apartment building where I had rented a room when I finished my studies. On the 4th ring, she picked up. "Hello. Hi, Connie. It's Eleanor, the one who used to rent the room at the end of the hall." There was a silence for a few seconds, and then her voice brightened. "Oh, Eleanor, the admin assistant who used to bring me donuts on Sundays? The same one? I'm on the train heading to a suburb of Chicago. I'm with my little girl. Do you have a room available for us to rent?" She didn't ask where my husband was or why I was alone with my daughter. "I have the last one in the hallway. It's small and hot. The bathroom is shared, but it's clean. If you want to come, it's yours. I have the deposit. Charge me the normal price." Connie let out a kind laugh. "You can be poor, but never let anyone think you're coming to beg. Call me when you get to the street, and I'll help you." Around noon, we got off at the station on the outskirts of Chicago. The street radiated heat. Delivery trucks and workers' cars passed one after another. Connie was already waiting under the corner, awning in a floral dress, her hair tied up. As soon as she saw me, she took my suitcase. "Here, I'll take this. You hold on to the kid," Clara whispered in my ear. "Who is she, Mommy?" "Connie, the owner of our new home." She turned around, smiling. "Just so you know, the house is very small, okay?" Clara answered with complete sincerity, hugging me. "It doesn't matter if it's small, as long as Mommy and I are together." Connie stood thoughtful for a moment and then started walking. We entered through an alley. You could hear the clatter of pans, mothers calling their children, a sewing machine, and the roar of motorcycles. The room at the end appeared with its chipped wooden door and a small window that looked directly onto the alleyway. I stood at the threshold, hugging Clara tightly. It was small, hot, and had nothing to spare. But for the first time in many years, I knew that the place I was about to enter was one I had chosen with my own 2 feet. Connie pushed the door open with her shoulder, the hinges creaked, and a little dust fell from the frame. "It's been empty for a month. If it works for you, it's yours." I went in. It could barely have been 100 square feet, just enough for an iron bed, a small table, and a faded plastic wardrobe. The old radiator made a dry noise with each turn, like an old man coughing. Clara looked around and asked, "Is this our house, Mommy?" "Yes, for now, this is our house." "Does it have a lock?" I froze. She didn't ask if it was pretty or ugly, only if it could be locked. "Yes, at night, Mommy will lock it." "Good, no one can get in." Clara nodded and sat her stuffed animal on the bed as if she were choosing a spot for a new family member. The rent was $500 a month, plus another month's deposit. I zelled Connie $1,000 with the little I had left in my account. The $35,000 savings account remained untouched. Connie jotted it down in her notebook and told me, "If you're ever short 1 month, I'd rather you be a few days late than borrow money from those payday lenders. It's easy to get into that, but impossible to get out. I'll try to be on time." Before she left, she gave me a new deadbolt. "The old lock is loose. Change it to be safer." I made a move to refuse, and she waved her hand. "When things get better for you, you can treat me to a pot roast." I started laughing. It was the first time I had laughed for real since I left the town. That afternoon, I bought some sheets, dish soap, a couple of bowls, and a secondhand microwave pan. Clara was sitting on the floor drawing on some newspapers and asked, "When are we buying a TV?" "When Mommy has more money." "Okay, I'll watch cartoons on your phone, it's fine." I stroked her head. The better children are when there are problems, the more a mother's heart breaks. I stored all my important documents in the waterproof pouch, wrapped them in a piece of cloth, and hid them at the bottom of the suitcase. After a divorce, those sealed papers sometimes protect a mother and her daughter better than the promises of their own family. The next morning, I left Clara with Maya, an early childhood education student who lived in the room next door. She was 21, petite, and talked as fast as a machine gun. "You go to work. I have classes in the afternoon, so I'll watch her in the morning." I warned her that Clara was a bit shy with strangers. "Please speak to her softly." Maya crouched down to her level. "Hey, Clara, while you're with me, we can draw some princesses." Clara grabbed my hand tightly. "Where are you going, Mommy?" "Mommy is going to work. When you finish lunch, I'll be back." "Promise?" I kissed her on the forehead. "Promise. I promise you." From 5 a.m., I was helping in a local diner and grill on the main avenue. I washed lettuce, cut cucumbers, beat eggs for omelets, prepared sandwiches, and scrubbed griddles. The bar was filled with construction workers, so my hands didn't rest. During the first batch of omelet appetizers, a pan slipped, and hot oil splashed my wrist, burning me alive. But at 8:30, the owner paid me my full wages and put a sandwich in a bag. "Here, take this to your little girl." I took the bread and said thank you with a lump in my throat. My daughter's breakfast that day had cost me 3 hours in front of boiling oil, but I felt much more relieved than with any money given with an air of charity. Around noon, I went to clean a small real estate office, and in the afternoon, I continued washing glasses in a coffee shop in the industrial park. The industrial dishwasher soap got into my scratches, leaving my hands red and raw. There were days when I just wanted to collapse on the floor when I got back to the apartment, but as soon as she heard my steps in the hallway, Clara would run to the door. "Mommy, you're back!" She would throw herself at my legs, as happy as if I had been gone for a month. "Did you eat with Maya?" "I ate a little mac and cheese, and I saved you half." Maya laughed behind her. She didn't want to finish it. She said she was sure you'd come home hungry. Every night, I wrote down all the expenses in a notebook. The rent, what I gave Maya, food, electricity, water. I wrote down every last cent. I understood that being poor is not as terrifying as not knowing where your money is going. Clara's anxiety, however, was becoming more evident. If I went to the shared bathroom and took a little longer, she would run out to call me. "Mommy, are you there?" One night, in the hallway, a drunk neighbor yelled at his wife. Clara got scared, huddled in a corner of the bed, and covered her ears. I hugged her tightly. "No one is going to yell at us. Will Daddy come and take us away?" I felt a pang in my heart. No one is going to take us. Mommy is staying with you? For real? To make her less afraid, I took an empty cookie box, covered it with colored paper, and told her it was the return box. Each day that I went to work and came back, keeping my promise, Clara could stick a star on the lid of the box. The first day, she stuck on a lopsided star and asked me, "If we have a lot of stars, will you never leave?" I smiled, though my soul ached. Even if there are no stars, I'm not going to leave. Those stars are just to help you remember that Mommy always comes back. One night, it poured rain, and water leaked through the ceiling, right in the middle of the room. I rushed to put a basin under it, moved the blankets, and pushed the suitcase to a dry corner. The sound of the rain hitting the fire escape outside sounded like 100 people were banging on the door. Clara was sitting on the bed, hugging her knees. "Mommy, our house is crying." I put a pot under another leak, trying to sound cheerful. "No, our house is just taking a shower, and it's showering without taking its clothes off." I let out a laugh. "It's just a little shy." Clara laughed too, grabbed a cloth, and started wiping the drops that splashed on the floor. The two of us cleaned, dodging the basins as if it were an obstacle course. At midnight, the rain eased up, and Clara fell asleep in my arms, her little hands still clutching my clothes. I looked at the damp room, my chapped hands, and the expense notebook next to the pillow. This new life wasn't comfortable, but at least in this room, no one asked me how much money I brought home to earn the right to sleep in it. The next morning, as I was trying to carry heavy grocery bags from the end of the street, a man driving a rideshare stopped in front of our door, took the bags from my hands, and smiled kindly. "Let me help you with that. A single woman with a kid, carrying this. You're going to break your back." I didn't yet know that in difficult times, there are hands that reach out to help you up, and others that just wait for you to lose your balance. That man's name was Damien. He was probably in his late 30s. He lived in the first room of the hallway. He left early and came back late. He was always well-dressed and spoke in an overly slick manner. Damien left the bags in a corner and dusted off his hands. "If you need to move anything heavy, just let me know. We're neighbors. Don't be shy." I thanked him. He took a small smoothie from his pocket and offered it to Clara. "Here, for you." Clara didn't take it. She just looked at me. I shook my head. "Thank you, but she already has milk." Damien's smile froze for a second. "You're so distrustful. I'm not going to eat anyone. It's not that. I just teach my daughter not to accept things from strangers." He laughed loudly. "But we live in the same building. What stranger?" When he left, Connie, who was sweeping the courtyard, came to the door. "Be careful with that, Damien. If he helps you, thank him, but don't give him an opening to get into your business." "Is there something wrong with him?" I asked. Connie shrugged. "I haven't caught him doing anything wrong yet, but you know what they say. The one who butters you up that much is always after something. Better to keep your distance." In the following days, Damien appeared with strange opportunism. Sometimes he would buy extra smoothies. Other times he would offer to drive me to the coffee shop if he was going that way. I always politely refused. I didn't want to owe favors to a man I barely knew. One night, coming back from the bar, he was sitting on his motorcycle in front of my door. He handed me a business card with only a phone number on it. "I have a job that would be perfect for you. Easy money." "What is it?" "Bottle service." I looked at him directly. "What kind of bottle service?" He lowered his voice. "Just regular VIP customers. You entertain them at a private club, pour drinks, chat. If one of them wants to spend some private time, well, you give in a little. With a face like yours, you can make in one night what you make washing glasses all week." I handed him back the card. "I'm not interested." Damien gave a half smile. "A divorced woman with a little girl, living in a rental. Let's see where you get the money to support yourself. I'm giving you a way out, and you're acting all high and mighty." I answered without flinching. "I may be poor, but my self-respect is not for sale. Don't bring this up again." His face changed completely. You've been around the block and you're playing hard to get. You think you're all that. I opened the door and pushed Clara inside. Are you done? Then get out of the way. Damien got up, letting out a sarcastic laugh. Let's see how long you last. 2 days later, while doing laundry in the building's basement, I heard 2 women talking in the corner. Hey, is it true that Eleanor's husband left her because she was messing around with other men? She seems like such an innocent little thing, but Damien says that when she was married, she went with anyone, and now she's taken the kid to squeeze money out of her ex. The hand with which I was holding Clara's t-shirt went rigid. I turned to them. Where did you hear that? The 2 of them got scared. One laughed nervously. We just heard it from people around. We don't know anything. Well, if you don't know if it's true, spreading rumors about someone just dirties your own mouths. I took the laundry basket. I kept my back straight, but my hands were shaking so much that the clothespins fell. Clara came back from playing in the courtyard with red eyes. I knelt down and asked her, "Who made you cry?" She bit her lip. Hugo said that Daddy left us because you're bad. Are you bad, Mommy? I felt a pang of pain and hugged her immediately. No, sweetie, I'm not bad. Then why do they say that? Sometimes there are people who don't know what's going on, but they love to make things up. Someone telling a lie doesn't make us bad. Remember? Clara nodded. Can I still play with Hugo? Yes, but if he says that to you again, you tell him to ask grown-ups about grown-up matters and not to go around hurting others. That night, Connie brought me a bowl of soup, looked at me, and asked, Is that Damien trying to cause trouble for you? I told her about the card and the rumor. She slammed the bowl on the table. I smelled it. Since he couldn't get what he wanted from you, he's spreading lies. The next morning, while everyone was doing laundry, Connie called Damien out loudly in the middle of the courtyard. You, come here, we need to talk. He put his hands on his hips. What's up, Connie? She pointed her finger right in his face. What's up is that you're going around saying Eleanor got kicked out of her house for cheating on her husband. He smiled contemptuously. I'm just saying what people are saying. What people? The only venomous tongue around here is yours. That girl works from sunup to sundown to raise her daughter. If you're not going to help, then shut your mouth. Everyone in the courtyard fell silent. Maya came out of her room. I watch her kid every day. Eleanor goes to work and comes back on time. That's slander. I came out with my phone in my hand. I have the messages where you suggested a certain job to me. After I turned you down, the rumors started. I have everything saved. Damien took half a step towards me. And what are you going to do? I didn't back down. If you harass me or spread rumors about me again, I will go to the police station and file a report against you. He laughed in anger. A report for this? Who do you think you are? I am a person with the right to protect my honor and my daughter's safety. That afternoon, he sent me one last message. Watch your back, snitch. You're not going to live peacefully here. I didn't reply. I took screenshots, printed them at a copy shop, and went with Connie to the police station. The police cited him. There was no big trial, but they made him sign a warning to stop harassing me and spreading lies. From that day on, when I crossed paths with him, he would look down. The gossip in the building died down. I learned that staying quiet at the right time is prudence, but staying quiet in the face of someone who uses your dignity for their own amusement only makes them believe it doesn't hurt you. On Sunday afternoon, I took Clara to a small park near an artificial lake. She was sitting, painting a little house with a red roof on a piece of recycled paper. I watched her as she drew a very, very large door. At that moment, someone stopped in front of me and called out in a surprised voice, Eleanor, is that you? I looked up. It was a man in a light blue shirt, carrying 2 bottles of water, with a face that was both familiar and distant. After 10 years without seeing each other, it took me a few seconds to recognize him. It was Liam. Liam smiled. Thank goodness. I'm not so old that you've forgotten me. He was a former classmate from our degree in business administration, a year older than me. We used to do projects together. He was always late, but he was the fastest at solving the exercises. After we graduated, I heard he was working in logistics for a company in Chicago, and we lost touch. He looked at Clara, who was still painting on the bench. Is she your daughter? Yes, her name is Clara. He sat at a respectful distance. He didn't stare at my worn-out clothes or ask why I was so thin. He offered me a bottle. I bought 2. Want one? I accepted it. He left the other one for Clara. Here, little one, but only drink it if your mom says it's okay. Clara looked at me, and I nodded. The little girl said softly, Thank you, sir. Liam's attitude relieved me. He didn't try to buy the child's affection right away. Nor did he use the gift to force his way into our story. He looked at the drawing. What a cool house. Why does it have such a big door? Clara answered with complete sincerity. So Mommy can see me from outside when she comes back from work. Liam's smile froze for a moment. He glanced at me but didn't ask any more questions in front of the little one. A while later, when Clara went to the playground area, Liam spoke. Do you live around here? I've been renting a room at the end of this street for a while. And work? I hesitated a bit and summarized that I helped at a bar, cleaned offices, and washed glasses in shifts. I didn't talk about my family or the neighbor Damien, nor did I use my divorce to make him feel sorry for me. After listening, he asked, Wouldn't you like to find something more stable? I smiled sadly. I would, but I haven't worked in my field for almost 4 years. I've probably forgotten how to use the software, and besides, I have the little one. Many companies back off when they hear that. Where I work, they're looking for someone to do data entry for the warehouse system. Full-time, office hours, but they demand speed because there's a lot of pressure with inventory. I looked at him, surprised. Are you going to recommend me? He immediately shook his head. I don't get anyone in. I'm just telling you where to apply and what papers they ask for. Whether they hire you or not will depend on you. That answer left me speechless. After so many days of feeling that people looked at me with pity, what I feared most was the word help. Some favors come with the price of making you feel inferior, but Liam simply opened a door without pushing me through it. I'm afraid they'll think I'm getting in through connections. I'm in the operations bay. I don't decide on hiring. Your interview would be with Brenda, the HR director. She has a reputation for being very tough. Even if I wanted to pull strings for you, I couldn't. I started to laugh. Hearing you say that gives me a lot of peace of mind. Life is strange. If people make it too easy for you, you get suspicious. If it's hard, you're happy. Liam sent me the company's address and the requirements via text. Before saying goodbye, he said, You were great with numbers in class. Taking a few years off doesn't mean you've forgotten. If you let time pass, eventually even you won't know what you're capable of. I looked at my dry, chapped hands from scrubbing. Then I'll go and try. I have nothing to lose by doing an interview. Exactly. The only thing that would keep you stuck is not trying. That same night, after putting Clara to bed, I took out my old phone to update my resume. I filled in my personal details quickly, but I got stuck in the professional experience section. It had been 4 years since I had the name of a company to put down. All I had behind me were early mornings caring for my daughter's fevers, juggling finances to make ends meet, cooking, and consoling tears. All of that had made me more patient, careful, and resilient to stress. But on paper, it was all just a big blank space. Maya, sitting next to me, helped me with the photo. Eleanor, don't overthink it. Just put that you were a sales administrative assistant, you did invoices, controlled packing slips, and that you left to take care of your daughter. Be clear, I was worried. Will they think I'm obsolete? Well, maybe, but you can't hide it. You have to be upfront. If they look down on you, it's better not to work there anyway. I laughed heartily. You're 21, but you sound like my grandmother. Maya put her hands on her hips. I study early childhood education. I spend my day resolving top-level crises. 1 cries, and 5 cry after him. There's no company more stressful than a classroom of 3-year-olds. Thanks to her, the room felt less suffocating. I looked for my college transcripts, my computer certificates, and my resume. The most decent thing I had was a white shirt, a bit worn at the collar, and some black pants. I washed them at night, hung them in front of the fan, and in the morning, I used Connie's iron. For the interview, Maya stayed with Clara. Seeing me dressed up, the little girl asked, Are you going to a wedding, Mommy? I'm going to apply for a job. And if you get it, you'll come home? I knelt down and intertwined my fingers with hers. I'll be back in the afternoon. Clara thought for a moment. She took one of the stars from her little box and stuck it on my hand. I'm lending this to you so you won't be scared. I hugged her, holding back tears. The company was in an industrial park in Chicago. In front, there was an endless line of trucks waiting to unload. The sound of barcode scanners and foremen calling out batch numbers made me feel like I was entering a familiar but now strange world. Brenda, the HR director, interviewed me. She was a woman in her 40s with a beige shirt, short hair, and a very sharp gaze. She reviewed my resume and got straight to the point. You haven't worked for almost 4 years. Why should we hire you instead of someone younger and used to the new software? I had prepared several answers, but I didn't want to sound artificial. I don't know if you should choose me, but if you give me a trial period, I will learn from scratch and take responsibility for every one of my mistakes. Brenda looked at me intently. You have a young child. What if she gets sick? I have someone to watch her and cover for me if necessary. I can't promise she will never get sick, but I can promise that I will not use my family situation as an excuse to be absent without notice. In a warehouse, there's a lot of pressure, and one wrong number can ruin an entire shipment. I squeezed my hands under the table. I understand pressure. I've handled debt tracking. Maybe I'll be a bit slow at first, but I assure you I'm not careless. Brenda turned the page. Why do you want to go back to work? That question brought me back to my rented room, to my daughter's hand clutching my clothes, and to what I heard my mother say behind the kitchen wall. But I wasn't going to play the pity card. I need a job to support my daughter on my own. I don't want to live off anyone's pity. Brenda looked up and stared at me. We don't pay salaries out of pity here. That's great. I don't want to be hired out of pity either. Brenda's lips formed an almost imperceptible smile. She gave me a basic data entry test. In the first 2 lines, my hands were shaking so much that I typed the password wrong. I took a deep breath, deleted it, and started again. I finished later than the person next to me, but I checked everything 3 times before handing it in. At the end of the morning, Brenda called me into her office. The company is offering you a 2-month trial period as a warehouse administrative assistant. The base salary will be $2,200 net per month, full-time. You start next week. I froze for a moment, afraid I had misheard. Did you say you're hiring me? You're on a trial period. Don't take it for granted. Don't celebrate too soon. I nodded several times. Yes, I understand. Thank you so much. When I left, I stood under the shade of a large pine tree in front of the company, and suddenly, tears fell. Not because that salary was going to magically change my life, but because for the first time in years, someone looked at me as a capable person. When Liam sent me a text to ask how it went, I replied, I'm starting a trial. He replied, Congratulations. Tomorrow, buy yourself a notebook and a pen. People usually forget those little things on the first day. I stopped by a stationery store and bought a blue-covered notebook. On the commuter train back, I opened the first page and wrote, I don't need anyone to save me. I just need to never give up. That afternoon, Clara ran to the door. Seeing that the star was still stuck to my hand, she shouted, Mommy, did you bring the star back? I picked her up. Yes, and Mommy also brought home a new job. Clara didn't understand about paychecks or trial periods. She just hugged my neck with a huge smile. I knew that from the next day, life wasn't going to be a walk in the park, but at least I had found a door I could walk through on my own 2 feet. On my first day of work, I arrived 40 minutes early. The security guard was just opening the warehouse shutter, and only a couple of trucks were waiting at the dock. I stood in front of the glass entrance, adjusted my shirt collar, and repeated to myself, Today, I'm not here to ask anyone for favors. In the data entry department, there were 4 of us. My desk was near the window, across from a woman of about 28 named Sharon. Sharon looked me over and asked, Are you the one Liam recommended? Liam told me there was an opening, but I earned the resume and the interview on my own. Sharon made a disdainful gesture. I'm just asking. The numbers fly by the hour here. You can't afford to be slow, no matter who recommended you. I understood immediately that I wouldn't have a peaceful adjustment period. In the morning, the team leader taught me how to match the incoming packing slips with the system, check the lot numbers, and assign them to shelves. I wrote 3 full pages in my notebook, but when I did it alone for the first time, I made a mistake in one character. Sharon pulled her chair closer and pointed to the screen. Look closely. This is a B, not an 8. If you get one letter wrong, the whole warehouse goes crazy looking for the pallet. I'm sorry, I'll fix it right now. Sorry doesn't do anything here. The material doesn't get placed on the shelves by apologizing. The people around me looked at me, and I felt my face burn, but I didn't reply. I corrected the code, reviewed the entire line again, and noted the error in my blue notebook. At lunchtime, everyone went together to the bar in the industrial park. I took out a container of cold food I had brought from home and sat at the last table in the hallway. Brenda passed by, and seeing me eating while reviewing the notebook, she stopped. Are you going to be studying on your break? I'm afraid of making another mistake this afternoon. Being cautious is fine, but if you push yourself too hard, you'll make more mistakes. Eat, rest a bit, and then continue. I closed the notebook. Brenda noticed my container, a simple turkey sandwich and a few slices of tomato. How's the first day? You're slower than the rest. Being slow isn't the worst. The worst is hiding your mistakes. After saying that, she left without encouraging me, but her words took a weight off my shoulders. At night, after bathing Clara and putting her to sleep, I would spend hours reading the program manuals on my phone. I noted the errors in red and how to solve them in blue. There were early mornings when my eyes would close, and my head would drop onto the table. Clara, half asleep, would pull my arm. "Mommy, aren't you sleeping? I'm going to study a little more." But do grown-ups have to study too? If grown-ups don't learn, life leaves them behind very quickly. Clara didn't fully understand, but she brought me her little pillow and put it on my back. "Well, study hard, Mommy." But work wasn't my only concern. I had to find a school for Clara urgently because Maya was about to start her vocational internship and couldn't stay with her all morning. I found a public preschool near our building. They would adjust the price of the lunch and activities if I managed my finances well. Her teacher was named Miss Alicia, a chubby woman with a voice so soft that it immediately calmed the children's fears. On the first day of school, Clara clung to my coat desperately. "Mommy, stay here with me until the afternoon." "Mommy has to go to work. I won't cry, but just sit there by the door." I knelt down. "I promise you, every afternoon I will come to get you. You'll eat here, take a nap, play with the other kids, and when you open your eyes, I'll be here." Daddy also said he would come on the weekend, and he didn't. I was speechless. Mess. Alicia approached, didn't pull her from my arms, just sat down next to her. "Clara, can you help me with something? I have some markers that are very messy, and I don't know how to put them in the box." The little girl looked at her and then at me. I intertwined my fingers with hers. Mommy keeps her promises. Clara let go of my coat very slowly. I turned and walked away quickly, knowing that if I looked at her for another second, I wouldn't have the strength to leave. In the afternoon when I picked her up, Miss Alicia showed me a drawing of Clara's. There was a little house with a girl inside and a mother standing at the street door. She told me in a low voice, "The child is adjusting, but she doesn't stop looking at the door. I think she's afraid you won't come back." I caressed the paper. "Our family has gone through a lot of changes lately. You just have to be on time. Children trust routines more than long explanations." From that day on, no matter how much work I had, I arrived at the school gate right on time, and every time she saw me, Clara would run out as if she had recovered the greatest treasure in the world. When my new life was starting to find some rhythm, Julian called. I was preparing dinner, and Clara was painting. Hearing the tone, she asked, "Is that Daddy?" I went out into the hallway to answer. "Is something wrong? I wanted to let you know. Mackenzie and I are getting married at the end of the year." I was silent for a few seconds. "I wish you well." Julian seemed surprised. "Aren't you going to ask me anything? What you do is no longer my business. I just ask that it doesn't affect Clara." He cleared his throat. "Mackenzie will be seeing Clara from now on too. Don't go putting ideas in the child's head. I have never spoken ill of you in front of her. I'm just warning you." I hung up the phone. The stew was still simmering in the kitchen. Clara was still painting her yellow house, but my hand was ice cold as I held the wooden spoon. That month, Julian paid the full $500 on the 5th. The next month, the 17th came, and nothing had arrived. He didn't give any notice or answer my first 2 messages. The following month, the transfer only showed $200 with the note, "I have a lot of wedding expenses. You have the $35,000. Have some understanding." I read that message over and over. The school lunch, food, and Clara's medicines seemed to shrink to accommodate the nuptial whims of adults. I didn't call to start a fight. I took a screenshot of the deposit, downloaded the bank statement for the month, and made a photocopy of the divorce settlement. Brenda noticed when I asked to leave an hour early. "Are you going to see your ex-husband? I want to get proper information on how to claim child support without getting into shouting matches." She gave me the number of a social worker at the city's women's center. She advised me, "Don't turn your daughter's affairs into a playground fight. Keep everything in writing." The social worker, whose name was Teresa, reviewed my papers very calmly. The asset settlement agreement and the child support are 2 legally distinct things. You are not asking your ex-partner for charity. You are demanding that he comply with an obligation set by a judge. And if he keeps underpaying me, what do? Keep all the receipts and messages. If he flat out refuses to comply, we will file an enforcement action to garnish his wages. But the most important thing is that you don't let him use guilt or pity to force you to give up your child's rights. I fell silent. Until that moment, every time I talked to Julian about money, I felt like a beggar. It turned out that what made me weak was not just my lack of money, but my ignorance of my own rights. Surely many women after a divorce are not afraid of poverty, but of those men who use the excuse of the children's well-being to force them to be quiet. I was no longer willing to be quiet because certain people only respect the women they once belittled when those women stop bowing their heads. That same night, when Clara fell asleep, I put all the papers on the table. I wrote a message and deleted it twice because it sounded too aggressive. On the third try, I left only what was strictly necessary. I looked at his name on the screen and hit send. It was the first time since the divorce that I wasn't writing as the resentful ex-wife, but as the mother defending what belonged to her daughter. The $35,000 corresponds to the agreed-upon asset division. The $500 monthly child support is your obligation to Clara and must be paid before the 5th, as stated in the settlement agreement. This month, you are short $250. I ask that you deposit it immediately and that from next month you comply with the dates. If you have a real financial problem, please let me know in writing. I read the text one last time and left the phone face down on the table. Not even 2 minutes passed, and the phone started vibrating nonstop. Julian was calling. I looked at the bed. Clara was asleep with one leg over her stuffed animal, murmuring something in her sleep. I went out into the hallway, closed the door tightly, and answered. His voice sounded like a whip. What kind of message is that? I sent what we needed to talk about. For a few miserable dollars, you act as if I'm stealing your daughter's money. It's not a few dollars or a few hundred. The problem is that you're sending me less money because you feel like it and without notice. Julian huffed. You got a nice chunk of change, and you're counting pennies with me. I have a wedding to plan, and there are 1,000 expenses. Can't you be a little understanding? I leaned against the cold hallway wall, controlling my tone of voice. Your wedding is your decision. Clara's lunch, school, and pediatrician won't wait for you to get married. If she's with you, you also have an obligation to support her. Don't put it all on me. I have never put it all on you. I work, I pay for my apartment, I take care of Clara every day. I'm just asking you to comply with what you signed before a judge. There was a silence, and when he spoke again, his voice was much colder. Now that you've learned a couple of laws, you think you're so smart? No, I squeezed the phone. I don't think I'm smart, I've just stopped looking at the ground. Suddenly, the other end of the line went silent. If it had been the old me, as soon as he raised his voice, I would have started crying, apologizing, and wondering what I had done wrong. But tonight, I had no need to be the good girl. Julian muttered furiously. Don't think that just because you have custody, you can do whatever you want now. I have my own house, a good car, and my salary is 3 times yours. If I ask for shared or full custody, let's see if you get to keep her. My heart skipped a beat, even though the social worker had warned me. Hearing it from his mouth, threatening to take Clara from me, froze my blood. I looked through the crack in the door. The small shadow of my daughter was reflected on the peeling wall. I took a breath and replied, if you want to file a custody claim, do it through legal channels. I'm not going to beg you. Julian was caught off guard by my calmness. You've gotten so brave. I may not have a big house, but I'm the one who takes her to the doctor when she has a fever, who picks her up on time, who takes care of her every day, and I have never put my own life ahead of her. And I also have all the bank statements where you pay me late and the messages where you say you're not paying your daughter because you have to pay for your wedding. Are you spying on me? I'm gathering evidence to protect my daughter. He laughed bitterly. Wow. You've been divorced for a few months, and you seem like a different person. I'm still the same. The thing is, you got used to me not daring to open my mouth. Before he finished the sentence, I heard a woman's voice near the phone. Give it to me. I'll talk to her. Julian must have had the speaker on because Mackenzie's voice came through crystal clear, sweet, but venomous. Hello, Eleanor. I think you should calm down. Julian hasn't abandoned his daughter. It's just that this month we have a lot of advance payments. And in what capacity are you commenting on his daughter's child support? Mackenzie hesitated, and then let out a nervous laugh. I'm his future wife, and Clara will be coming to our house a lot. I just want things to be done in a civilized manner. Civilized is complying with a court agreement, not using wedding reception expenses to take food out of a child's mouth. Mackenzie's tone became more honeyed. Don't be so harsh. $35,000 is not a small amount of money. Anyone who hears you would think Julian left you destitute. I never said he left me destitute. Well, think about Clara's future and don't get like this out of pride. Little girls need their father, not just the money. I closed my eyes. It's true. Children need a father. but a father who doesn't just show up when it's convenient or when he has spare time. A father who follows through, who knows which school she goes to, and who doesn't cut his own daughter's money to pay for an open bar. There was a silence, and I added, "And as for you, if you're really thinking about Clara's future, I beg you to stop using the for the child's sake excuse to force me to swallow her father's irresponsibility." Julian shouted and grabbed the phone. "That's enough. Yes, that's enough. You transfer the $250 before the end of the week, and starting next month, you comply with the 5th. If you're late again, I will initiate garnishment proceedings as I've been advised. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you," he snorted loudly. "If you act like this, don't come crying to me later if I don't show you any consideration." I looked at the peeling door of my rented room. "You and I are already divorced. I don't need any consideration. I just want you to stop trampling on your daughter's rights." And I hung up. As soon as the screen went dark, my knees trembled. I had to lean on the iron railing to keep from falling. My hands were sweating, and my heart was racing at 1,000 beats per minute. I wasn't as strong as my voice had pretended to be. I was terrified that he would try to take the child from me, that my low salary would be the excuse to say I couldn't support her, that one day they would take Clara from this apartment because her father lived in a suburban house. But the fear no longer made me want to run and apologize. I saved the date of the call, the summary of the conversation, and took screenshots of the warning messages. The social worker Teresa had made it clear. Anything concerning your daughter, don't keep it in your head, put it in writing. A little later, a message from Julian arrived. "I'll send the rest tomorrow, but don't get too clever with me." I didn't take the bait. I simply replied, "Noted. I ask that you comply with the dates going forward." The next morning, I received a notification from the bank with the deposit. I stared at the number for a long time, not because of the joy of the money itself, but because for the first time, I realized I didn't need to cry and scream for someone to learn to respect my boundaries. Clara came out of the room, rubbing her eyes and shuffling her feet. "Mommy, what are you doing standing there?" I put the phone away. "I'm just looking to see that it's daytime now." The little girl looked out the window towards the inner courtyard as the first rays of sun timidly crept in. "Mommy, are you going to come pick me up on time today?" "Yes, I promised you." Clara hugged me around the waist and ran off to find her school uniform. I stayed at the door for a few more seconds. Last night, I felt pain, panic, and tremors. I had learned that being calm doesn't mean there are no more wounds. It means that even if you have a hurricane inside, you're no longer going to let the one who sank you take the helm of your life again. On Monday morning, as soon as I clocked in, I noticed a very tense atmosphere in the office. The phones wouldn't stop ringing. The operators were running back and forth, and the warehouse supervisor was standing in the middle of the hallway with a pile of packing slips in his hand and a face red with anger. I hadn't even taken off my coat when Sharon called me. "Eleanor, come see this." On her screen was the order for a huge shipment of home appliances sent to an important client in Gary, valued at almost $480,000. The code in the system marked the products as top quality, but when the client opened the pallets, almost a third of the shipment was defective products that had been previously set aside to be returned to the manufacturer. I saw my username at the end of the data entry history. My heart sank. It was impossible. I had thoroughly reviewed that shipment before leaving on Friday. Sharon crossed her arms. "The system says your user modified the code." "What, does the computer change it by itself?" "I want to see the full edit history." The supervisor approached with a harsh voice. "Eleanor, your user was used to change the status of the merchandise from return to suitable for shipment. The client is demanding compensation. We have the payment blocked, and the trucks are coming back for the load." I felt a cold chill run through my veins. I did not modify that data. Sharon spoke just low enough for it to seem like an offhand comment, but loud enough for everyone to hear. When you're raising a child alone and come in without sleep, these things happen. You probably entered the code wrong in the morning and don't remember. Another administrative assistant nodded. New people always get mixed up with the big shipments. I turned to Sharon. "You can suspect me, but until this is cleared up, I ask you not to use my personal situation as an excuse to blame me." Sharon shrugged. "I'm just saying what I think. This is a company, not a rehabilitation center for rebuilding lives." That sentence stabbed me like a dagger, but I bit my tongue. If I started arguing at that moment, they would only see a hysterical woman trying to save her own skin. Liam came in from the warehouse, looked at the screens, and asked, "Did Eleanor prepare the shipment alone?" The supervisor replied, "She entered the data. Kevin did the count and gave her the packing slips. Liam looked at me. I'm going to notify management to audit the process. I shook my head. Don't defend me. This is a very serious mistake. I know. If you stand up for me, they'll think you're covering for me because we're friends. Liam looked at me and nodded. Okay, if you need anything, ask me. I won't get involved in the audit. Brenda sent me to her office. On the table, she already had an incident report and my user history ready. She neither scolded nor comforted me. Are you sure you didn't modify the data? Absolutely sure. But the user is yours. Since the company has not yet concluded the investigation, I ask for until tomorrow afternoon to review everything. If I don't find another explanation, I will accept my dismissal, and the incident report will bear my name. I looked at the paper on the table. In the past, a mistake like this would have plunged me into misery, but now it could cost me my job, my salary, a fine, or even take me to court for fraud. I want to request access to the building's card entry records and the hallway security camera footage. Brenda looked up. What do you expect to find? The exact moment the system was edited. If I wasn't in the office at that time, someone else used my user. She leaned back in her chair. All right. But if it turns out someone stole your password because you were the one who left it written on a post-it note, the final responsibility is still yours. I will accept my share of the blame if there is any, but I will not take responsibility for what I haven't done. That afternoon, I barely moved from the monitor. The system log indicated that the data had been changed at 8:16 p.m. on Friday. I remembered perfectly that I left early that day to pick up Clara from her after-school activities because she had a pediatrician's appointment for a sore throat, but my memory was not valid as proof. I asked security for the records. My card marked an exit at 5:42 p.m. and did not register any re-entry. Sharon, who was looking over my shoulder, lowered her voice a bit. Maybe you connected from home. The warehouse system is an intranet. You can't access it from outside. Then who has your password? That question left me petrified. On the first day, the temporary password they gave me had uppercase letters, lowercase letters, and numbers. It was impossible to memorize, so I wrote it in the corner of my blue notebook. I changed it shortly after, but I wasn't sure if the last time I had changed it was before or after what happened on Friday. I opened my notebook and saw that the corner of the page had been torn off. Kevin's face appeared in my mind, the warehouse worker who came to ask me for packing slips. That day, I had gotten up to go to the photocopier for a few minutes and had left my notebook open on the table. And coincidentally, Kevin was the one in charge of loading that same shipment. I looked for him in the packing area. Kevin was signing some papers. When he saw me, he forced a smile. What's up, Eleanor? Did you come back to the office on Friday night? His smile became tense. No way. I left in the afternoon. Are you sure? Of course I am. Why are you asking weird questions? I didn't want to confront him right there. An innocent person would have been surprised. A guilty person might play innocent. I needed evidence that couldn't be refuted. I reviewed the hallway camera. Sure enough, at 7:58 p.m., Kevin appeared, entering the offices through a secondary warehouse door. He was inside for almost half an hour and then came out with some papers in his hand. I watched it twice. At that time, not a single administrative worker was there. The next morning, I went to Brenda's office with everything. Network records, access logs, security camera images, shift schedules, and the photo of the torn page from my notebook. Brenda looked at it all. Can you prove that Kevin was the one who stole your password? I don't have direct proof that he sat at my computer, but he was in the offices at the exact time the system was modified. He was in charge of that shipment, and he lied to my face, saying he left in the mid-afternoon. Management summoned Kevin. At first, he continued to deny everything. I just came back to get some packing slips I forgot. I have no idea what her password is. The IT guy brought the server report. The changes were made from Terminal 3, which is Eleanor's computer. Kevin swallowed hard. Brenda put the camera photos on the table in front of him. You entered the offices at almost 8, and you told her you had left in the mid-afternoon. Why did you lie? I was afraid they would fire me. I looked him straight in the eye. That day, you came up behind me while my notebook was open with my password written down. The page was found torn. Can you explain that? Kevin slammed his hand on the table. Don't blame me. You were the one who wrote it down, and now you want to use me as a scapegoat. Liam watched from the back of the room without saying a word, keeping his promise. At that moment, the warehouse manager came in with a new report. 3 of the top quality pallets have disappeared from the loading area. and in their place, 3 pallets of return products have been put on the trucks. And according to the dock cameras, it was you, Kevin, who moved those pallets late on Friday without any supervisor's order. Kevin turned white. After an hour of cornering him, Kevin hung his head and confessed. He was in cahoots with someone from the outside to swap the new appliances for the defective ones and resell the good ones. He used my user to alter the system data, convinced that if anyone noticed, I would take the fall for being the new person on probation. Hearing him, I felt a mix of rage and terror. A miserable piece of paper, a careless mistake of mine, almost became the perfect weapon to push me into the abyss. The company drew up an immediate disciplinary dismissal for Kevin. They sealed the server and sent the case to the local police for attempted theft. I also had to sign a mild written warning for violating the password policy. I signed it without hesitation. I take responsibility for my mistakes, but I won't take the blame for others' crimes. When I left the office, Sharon was waiting in the hallway. She looked away for a few seconds and said, "I apologize. When I saw it was your user, I assumed it was you, and on top of that, I brought up your daughter. I crossed the line." I stayed silent, and she continued, I'm sorry. I closed my notebook. Don't worry. I also used to look in the mirror thinking that, since I had been a housewife for years, I was no longer useful. Thank goodness numbers and cameras don't have prejudices. Sharon bit her lip and nodded slightly. That afternoon, I left work when the warehouse lights were already on. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like Liam's recommendation, or the divorced woman begging for a salary. I was a professional who had uncovered the truth, cleared her name, and taken responsibility for her own mistakes. When they corner you against a wall, it's not for you to give up. It's for you to discover that your legs are much stronger than you thought. 3 days after the incident with Kevin, Brenda called me into her office. I went with a knot in my stomach. Although it was clear that I had not participated in the theft, I was still on probation, and my carelessness with the password was real. They could perfectly well fire me to avoid problems. Brenda slid some papers towards me. Read this carefully and sign at the end. I looked at the title of the page and almost fainted. Full-time offer letter. Really, Brenda? Yes. The management has decided to end the trial period early. Your base salary will be $2,800 net, plus full health benefits and a $401k match, plus a meal allowance. I was petrified. Brenda looked up. Does that seem too little? No, it's just that I'm so happy I don't know what to say. Well, don't thank me. If the company is making you permanent, it's because you're valuable. This isn't a charity. Her words still sounded cold, but for me, it was the greatest recognition I had received in years. I took the pen and read every clause. My first strokes trembled a little, but the signature came out firm. As I put the pen down, I felt like I was signing a new agreement with myself. No more depending on the goodwill of others. I went out into the hallway and called Maya. Tonight, I'm ordering dinner for everyone. I passed probation and got the official offer. Maya shrieked with joy over the phone. Seriously? Then I get to choose. I want sushi. I started laughing. My budget for celebrating is $20, smarty. I'll treat you to a large pizza, some garlic knots, and if you want, a slice of cheesecake for dessert. What matters is celebrating. That night, I bought food from the bar downstairs. Connie brought a bottle of sparkling water, and Maya bought fruit. Clara was sitting in the middle of the room with a paper crown she made at school. Mommy, are you the boss now? No, sweetie. Mommy is a full-time employee now. What's full-time? Maya answered very seriously. It means your mommy works so well that they gave her real benefits and want her to stay. I gave Maya a gentle tap on the head so she wouldn't exaggerate. Clara looked at me very seriously. So, we don't have to worry anymore? Her question made the laughter die down for a moment. I took Clara onto my lap. Mommy has to keep working hard, but now things are going to be much more stable for us. Clara gave me a loud kiss. I like that Mommy is full-time. That night, when everyone had left, I opened my expense notebook again. I reviewed the rent, electricity, water, Clara's school lunch, what I gave Maya for watching her, the month's groceries, and medicine. I opened another online account in my name and called it Clara's Fund. Every month, even if it was only $30 or $40, I would transfer it there. I deposited Julian's child support into a different account to have a clear statement if I ever went to court, and I didn't touch it unless it was absolutely necessary. The $35,000 from my divorce was still intact. I only withdrew a little to pay for Clara's health insurance and some school supplies. I didn't want to go to the extreme of skimping on my daughter's needs, but I also wasn't going to let that money become a bottomless pit that anyone could dip into. Life began to settle down. In the mornings, I took Clara to school, and in the afternoons, I sometimes stayed with Sharon to do inventory checks. We weren't close friends, but we helped each other. When she saw me get stuck on an Excel sheet, she would come over and say, "Eleanor, look at column H. The data is off there, not in the product code." I would thank her. In the afternoon, I would go to pick up Clara, and she no longer waited anxiously at the door. Her face would simply light up from ear to ear. We ate dinner together, sometimes fish, sometimes simple lentils. She would always set aside the best piece of bread or chicken for me. "Here, Mommy, so you're not tired from work." And I would give it back to her. "You have it, you need to grow big." She would put her hands on her chin and say very seriously, "When I grow up and work, I'll buy you the food." And I would laugh. "You grow up to be a good person, then we'll see who buys the food." Not everything was beautiful. There were nights when Clara coughed so much that I would spend the early morning hours wide awake, close to her chest. But those were normal worries, not the anxiety of feeling suffocated because my life depended on the crumbs someone else wanted to give me. Everything was going smoothly until one afternoon in mid-November. I was entering some packing slips into the system when my phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was my mother. A pang shot through my chest. Since I left my hometown, my mother had barely called a couple of times, almost always to ask about the girl or to reproach me for not visiting. She never asked me how I was living. I asked for permission to take the call in the hallway. "Hello, Mom." On the other end, I only heard ragged breathing and then my mother's crying. "Eleanor, your father fell in the bathroom. The doctors at the hospital said it's a mild stroke. Come right now. If you don't come, who can I ask for help?" Her last sentence had that familiar touch of reproach, but this time I didn't pay it any mind. I remembered my father on the patio, saying in a low voice, "If something happens to you, this house won't turn its back on you." I went into Brenda's office and told her. She looked at my schedule. "Pass your packing slips to Sharon. You have 2 days of leave for a family member's hospitalization. If you need more, let us know. Get the medical justifications. And be careful. Stroke rehabilitation is very tough. Don't trust the online miracle cures." I thanked her, grabbed my things, and ran to the school to get Clara. On the way, I called Maya. "Maya, my father is in the hospital. I'm going to the town urgently. Can you stay with Clara tonight?" "Yes, of course. I don't have classes tomorrow morning, and I'll let her teacher know." Clara, upon hearing that her grandpa was sick, started to fuss. "I want to go see Grandpa." I hugged her tightly. "You stay with Maya, be good. When Grandpa gets better, I'll take you to see him." "Is Grandpa going to die?" I was scared. "Don't say that. He's sick, and the doctors are curing him." Clara bit her lip and ran to get her latest drawing from her backpack. "Give this to him so he gets better faster." I put it in my bag, gave her a kiss, and rushed to the bus station for the bus to my hometown. When I arrived at the university hospital, it was already night. My mother was hunched over in a plastic chair, her eyes swollen and her hair disheveled. When she saw me, she shot up like a spring. "Why did you take so long?" I overlooked the reproach. "What floor is he on? What exactly are the doctors saying?" I went into the room. My father was in bed with the corner of his mouth slightly drooping and his left arm limp on the sheets. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. I went over and grabbed his right hand. "I'm here, Dad." He tried to speak, but only inarticulate sounds came out. "It's Eleanor." I bent down and let my tears fall on his thin hand. "Don't talk, Dad. Just stay calm." I went to admissions to leave my information. I went downstairs to the cafeteria to get a coffee and some purees. Ethan, my brother, hadn't appeared at any point. My mother said he was at his vocational internship and wasn't answering his phone. Around midnight, I went out into the hallway to get some water and saw my mother talking on the phone at the end of the stairs. She was speaking very softly, but in a hurry. "Your sister is here. You just relax. She has $35,000 in the bank. This time we'll tell her to take out money to help us all. She can't be so selfish as to keep it all for herself and her daughter while we're drowning." I stood planted in the middle of the hallway, lit by cold fluorescent lights, with the unopened water bottle in my hand. My father was in a bed, unable to move an arm, and the only thing my mother was thinking about was not just paying for his treatments, but how to use my money to patch up the holes of her spoiled child. I felt my blood run cold, but I didn't go to confront her. I went back to the room, left the water on the nightstand, and tucked my father in. He looked at me tiredly. Are you thirsty? I gave him small spoonfuls of water, trying to keep my hands from shaking. At 1 a.m., the doctor told us he was stable. The stroke had been mild, but he needed strong medication and to start rehabilitation soon. The expenses were not the absolute ruin my mother had painted. I spoke to the nurse about the care plan, checked the insurance forms, and went back to the hallway. My mother had already returned. Ethan has arrived. He says he's on his way. Dad is in the hospital, and he's coming at this hour? What's his big problem? I looked directly at my mother. What's his problem? So much so that you have to ask for my savings. My mother got scared. You heard us? I heard enough to know you want my money. She changed her tone immediately. Not take it. I wanted to borrow it. Your father is in the hospital. Your brother is going through a rough patch. Your family. Are you going to stand by and do nothing? How much money do you need? She thought I was giving in, so she came closer, lowering her voice. About $10,000. I stared at her. She looked away. $10,000? The doctor just told me that Dad's treatment costs almost nothing with insurance. What's the other $10,000 for? She started stammering. For private rehabilitation, for things around the house, for Ethan's tuition. She listed so many things that she ran out of breath and finally became defensive. We're a family. You sound like an IRS inspector. It's just money. The money is for Clara's future. I have the right to ask. At that precise moment, Ethan appeared. He was wearing a low-brimmed cap, a dirty sweatshirt, and his eyes were bloodshot. Upon seeing me, he didn't ask how Dad was. He directly took my mother's arm and pulled her to a corner. I stepped in his way. Let's talk here, in front of everyone. How much money do you owe? Ethan looked at me with contempt. What's your deal? You show up and you're already giving orders? You're using Dad's illness to get money out of me? Of course I'm asking. He looked at my mother. Did you tell her? My mother grumbled. Shut your mouth and go see your father. I owe a few thousand. If you lend it to me, I'll pay it back when I get paid from my internship. How much? $5,500. There was a silence. $5,500 for what? My mother tried to intervene. He took out a payday loan to pay for some school things, and the interest has drowned him. Ethan huffed. Mom, don't tell her everything. I glared at him. What else is there? In the end, by digging, the whole truth came out. He had taken out payday loans from mobile apps to buy a new iPhone. Then he used what was left to bet on soccer online. Since he lost, he took out another loan to cover the first one and ended up in the hands of loan sharks who charged him crazy interest rates. In addition to that $5,500, my mother wanted me to give him another $2,000 to buy Ethan a decent second-hand car, because she said going to his internship in my father's old car embarrassed him in front of his classmates. I listened to everything and felt like I was about to burst into laughter. So, of the $10,000, the real money Dad needs to adapt his room and pay for a private therapist is $1,000. The rest is to pay off your son's gambling debts and buy him a new car. My mother was offended. He's your little brother. If he has a good job one day, he can help us all. I looked at the woman who had raised me. A woman who always taught me to take care of her husband, but who deep down in her soul always preferred her son. Dad has been in that bed since noon. The one who paid for the admission, who has been here and spoken to the doctor, has been me. The one you call your pillar and your pride shows up at 1 a.m., loaded with debts. My mother turned red with anger. Don't give yourself a medal for a few bucks. I gave birth to you and raised you. If there are problems in the house, you have to pitch in. I'll pitch in my share. I took out the folder with the hospital receipts. I'll pay for the pharmacy medicines, the walker, and Dad's private rehabilitation therapies half and half with you. The rest of the problem, you and your son can handle. And if Dad really needs a physical therapist at home next month, we'll calculate it again. Ethan looked up sharply. It's easy for you to talk. The debt is mine, but they're looking for me. How do you expect me to get out of this if you don't help me? And when you took out the loan to gamble, did you ask me if I could get out of this? He kicked the hallway wall. It was a mistake. You have $35,000. If you take out $5,000, you'll get me out of this jam. You're not going to go broke. As soon as I'm working, I'll pay you back. And how many days have you worked in your life? I'm not working yet because I need a car to get to companies. The old car starts perfectly. Yeah, it starts, but it looks like I came from the dump. My friends have awesome cars. I looked at him without realizing I was about to explode. My father was in a hospital with half his body paralyzed, and he was more worried about not looking bad in front of his drinking buddies. My mother, as always, jumped to protect him. He's young. Everyone does stupid things at his age. Family is for helping each other. If you don't save his skin, who will? I answered slowly. You treat a wound on someone's hand, but you can't let someone who cuts himself on purpose for attention keep using the family as a handkerchief for his tears. My mother stood up. You have money, and you're going to let your brother's legs get broken? What kind of sister are you? I stood up too. My heart was racing, but my voice no longer trembled. I am Ethan's older sister, but I am also Clara's mother. If I spend all my money paying for this brat's mistakes and tomorrow my daughter gets seriously ill, who do I ask for money? My mother pointed her finger at me. Since you got divorced, you've become a textbook egoist. You only think about your daughter and your money, only about yourself. That sentence got stuck in my throat, but I didn't take a single step back. I gave all my best years to my ex-husband because I thought we were a family. And then I came back to your house with my daughter because I thought my own blood would welcome me unconditionally. And in both places, I almost lost everything because people think they have the right to take what little I have. Ethan let out a sarcastic laugh. Don't think you're so smart. You got cheated on and left high and dry too. What are you holding on to the money for? You'll just find another sucker to support you. The hospital hallway fell silent. I walked over and slapped him across the face. The sound wasn't very loud, but it was enough to leave him petrified. My mother covered her mouth in horror. My palm was burning. I had never laid a finger on my brother. Since we were little, even if he tore my notes or insulted me, my mother always said, "You're the older one, you have to give in." But today, I wasn't going to give in an inch of my dignity. I looked Ethan straight in the eye. Don't you ever use my misfortunes to justify how useless you are. I may be divorced, but that doesn't give you the right to look down on me. I'm saving my money for Clara because I want to sleep peacefully, not for you to throw it away on sports betting. Ethan touched his face and looked at my mother. You remember this. And you, Mom, remember that my father is in there, and this scoundrel only came to ask you for cash. I heard the doorknob of the room turn slightly. I turned and saw my father peeking out. Tears were streaming down his right side. His healthy arm rose tremblingly towards me. I quickly went in and took his hand. Dad, calm down. I'll take care of your medical expenses. You just focus on getting better. He tried to speak. Ale, an, or, for. Give me. I shook my head. Don't talk, Dad. But his hand clutched mine, and in his eyes, I saw for the first time the shame of a father who knew the harm they were doing to me but never had the guts to stop his wife. I don't know if I forgave him in that moment. I only knew he needed me. Ethan was going to have to figure things out on his own. The next morning, I spoke with the doctors, filled out the discharge papers and admissions, and prepared a rehabilitation plan for him. I gave my mother enough money for the hospital expenses and demanded that she keep the receipt for anything extra she bought. My mother took the bills with a stone-faced expression, and Ethan didn't even mention the money issue in front of me. He sat in the hallway chairs, looking at his phone as if he were looking for his next victim. In the afternoon, I took the bus back to Chicago. I had work tomorrow, and Clara was waiting for me. Before I left, I didn't realize that when my mother went down to the cafeteria, Ethan had taken her phone to search through our WhatsApp messages. He took a picture of the exact address of my apartment in the Chicago suburbs that I had sent her weeks ago and of my real-time location. Since he couldn't get the money from me by crying, he was going to try to use fear at my doorstep to force me to pay his debts. 3 weeks after that, life seemed calm. My father was doing his daily exercises and was starting to move his fingers. Ethan had disappeared from the radar. He neither apologized nor mentioned the debt again. One Friday afternoon, I had just given Clara dinner because she had a bit of a cold. We were in our small room. She was painting at the low table. Suddenly, 3 brutal knocks shook the metal door. Bam, bam, bam. Clara jumped so high that the marker went flying. A man's hoarse voice shouted from the hallway, "Eleanor Vance, are you in there?" I went to the door but left the lock on. "Who is it?" "Your brother owes a lot of money. He gave us this address and said his sister has $35,000 to cover his debts. Open the door, or we're calling the police for fraud. I don't owe you anything, nor did I co-sign for anyone. Go find the one who took out the loan." The man pounded on the door with his fist. "Don't mess with us. We have a court order, and if you don't pay us, we'll have your brother locked up. Open up now." The metallic noise terrified Clara. She crawled under the table and covered her ears. Mommy, are they going to take us? I turned and saw my daughter pale as a ghost. All the anger I felt instantly turned into a block of ice. I knelt down to her level. No one is going to take us. I know you're scared. We're going to go through the adjoining door to Connie's room. The back of the room had a small door that led to Connie's kitchen. I picked up Clara and slipped into Connie's house. Maya, who was there studying, immediately grabbed the child. I told Maya, lock the door, and whatever happens, don't let Clara out. Clara grabbed my shirt. Mommy, don't go. I'm right next door, sweetie. I promise I'm not going anywhere. Connie grabbed my arm. Call the police. Don't go out and fight with those animals. I called 911, gave my exact address, said how many there were, that they were armed, and were threatening me. Then I turned on my phone's voice recorder. I pressed myself against the door. What are your names? Who gave you this address? One of them let out a dirty laugh. Our names don't matter. If you want to sleep peacefully, tell that Ethan to bring us the money. I repeat, I am not your co-signer, and I am recording all of your threats. The guy kicked the door again. You think calling the cops is going to scare us? At that moment, Connie opened the door to her main apartment. She stood in the middle of the hallway with a broom in her hand. All right, you collection agents, go collect from the one who owes you. You shut up, old lady. This has nothing to do with you. Connie slammed the broomstick on the floor. I own this building, and if you're banging on my doors, it has everything to do with me. You come here acting all tough with a single woman and a child. Have you no shame? Several neighbors opened their doors, and someone started recording with their phone. The two thugs backed down a bit but remained planted, blocking the exit. 10 minutes later, 2 police patrols arrived, identified them, and took us all to the local police station to give statements. There, I provided the recording, showed the messages, and proved that I had no relationship with the debtors or with Ethan. The debt collectors stated that Ethan gave them my address, saying, if I'm late in paying, go to this house. It's my older sister, and she'll never leave me high and dry. I felt such disgust for my own brother that I almost threw up right there. I called my mother. Get on a train, a taxi, or whatever, and bring Ethan to the police station here right now. What's wrong, dear? Your debt collectors came to pound on my door and threaten me in front of your granddaughter. Come now. 2 hours later, they appeared. Ethan walked in, hunched over with his hood up, and my mother followed, pale as a sheet. As soon as she saw me, my mother tried to grab my arm. Daughter, let's not make things bigger than they are. Drop the charges against your brother. I pulled away sharply. Go to the waiting room first and look at Clara. Maya had brought Clara. The little girl was still clutching her stuffed rabbit to her chest, her eyes swollen from crying. Upon seeing her grandmother, instead of running to her, she hid behind Maya. My mother knelt down. Clara, come to Grandma. Clara shook her head and said in a hoarse voice, Grandma, don't let the bad men take my mommy. My mother was stunned. Clara continued to cry softly. Uncle Ethan told the men that Mommy had money, and they came to bang on the door. Are they going to take Mommy, Grandma? My mother looked at Ethan. For the first time, she saw live and in person the result of spoiling a son to the point of turning him into a monster who endangered his own niece. She went up to Ethan and gave him a tremendous slap that echoed throughout the waiting room. Look at her. Look at your niece. You are so shameless that you use your family as a human shield to get out of your mistakes. Ethan covered his face. But what are you doing, Mom? What I should have done 20 years ago, Ethan muttered. I just told them my sister had money to buy me more time. To buy you time? And you give them the address so they can come and scare a child? Ethan didn't dare say a word. My mother turned to me, her lips trembling. Eleanor, please, for pity's sake, pay off the debt this time so they leave us alone, and then I'll find him a job to pay you back. I looked at her for a long minute. After seeing how Clara is trembling with fear, you're still asking me to save his skin? She choked. I answered slowly, enunciating each syllable. I am not putting 1 cent towards Ethan's debt. He has to give the information of the apps he used to the police and face the consequences. An officer made him sign a document in which he promised never to use my information or my address to apply for loans. They also explained to Ethan that he was the sole, civilly responsible party for the debts. Ethan was sweating cold. He no longer had that cocky attitude of his because he knew Mom wasn't going to save him anymore. My mother demanded that on Monday he show up for work as an apprentice at her friend's HVAC company in their town, that he sell his old car and expensive phone, and figure things out on his own. Ethan looked at me, cowed. Eleanor, I'm sorry. I returned his gaze. Are you sorry for scaring Clara or because the police were called? He hung his head. For both. I don't believe you. When you actually start working, apologize without hiding behind your mother's skirts, and leave us all in peace. Then I'll listen to you. We left the police station at night. Clara was hugging my arm like a koala, and my mother walked behind in silence. When we got back to the apartment, Connie brought us some chicken noodle soup. Clara ate 2 spoonfuls and asked again if they were going to take me to jail. I had to repeat it to her 10 times. No, Mommy is with you. My mother sat in the only free plastic chair and looked at the door with the dents from the blows and at her granddaughter sleeping, clutching my sweater. That night, my mother didn't go back to her town. She asked to stay and sleep on the floor of my room. For the first time, that woman who thought I was living like a queen for having a $35,000 savings account was going to sleep in a tiny room without air conditioning in 95-degree heat, a room paid for with every cent of my sweat. That night, she sat for a long time in the chair next to the door. We had barely turned on a warm light. The fan hummed but didn't cool anything. I stroked Clara. She would startle in her sleep from time to time, feeling for my neck to see if I was still there. My mother saw it all. She saw the old rice cooker in a corner, Clara's clean school uniforms on hangers, and the board behind the door where I had pinned every last grocery receipt. She asked softly, "Do you track all this every month?" "Mom, if you don't track it, the money disappears without you realizing it. Does your salary cover it?" "It does. If there are no last-minute expenses, I don't have to touch the savings account." Hearing me say that, my mother paused, afraid that mentioning the word savings would cause me to slam the door in her face again. I spoke first. "I still have it saved, but I don't live off it. Mom, I work for the day-to-day. I have that money for when the girl goes to college, if she gets very sick, or if one day we can make a down payment on a small apartment." My mother looked at her calloused hands. "I thought if you had that money saved, you wouldn't have to struggle." I looked at the narrow walls that were barely bigger than the kitchen of our town. "Mom, those dollars in the bank don't prevent me from having to juggle to make ends meet. They don't take care of my daughter when she gets a fever at 3 a.m., and they certainly don't stop people from looking at me like a poor divorced woman. They only give me the security of not ending up under a bridge, but they're not for me to live on day to day." My mother fell silent. I put Clara to bed and pulled the blanket up to her waist. My mother tried to help me cover her, but Clara jumped, pulling her little hand away in fear. "I'm here. Calm down." Until the child fell back asleep, my mother watched her with shining eyes. "She got such a scare today, the poor thing." "It's not from today, Mom. Since her father started disappearing, she would ask me daily if I was going to leave too. Then we went back to the town, and she heard me say we were there on sufferance." I didn't finish the sentence. My mother understood perfectly. She went out into the narrow courtyard hallway for some fresh air. She sat on the floor, leaning her back against the wall. Between us, there was only a silence, much more painful than any shout or fight. The dim lights of the alley flickered in the wind. In a distant room, a mother could be heard singing to a baby, and on the avenue, trucks continued to pass. My mother broke the silence. "When you called saying you were separating, I was so upset. You were worried about what people would say." She shook her head gently. "I was afraid. Afraid that you would come with a small child and spend the rest of your life depending on us. Afraid that Ethan would see a bad example. Afraid that Ethan would have to help support you and Clara, ruining his own chances to get ahead in life." I let out a laugh, but it sounded hollow. "You were afraid of many things, but you weren't afraid of my pain." That sentence made her lower her head completely. "I thought that when a woman gets married, her family becomes her husband, that if there are problems, you put up with them. When your father and I were short on money and he had an unbearable temper, I never thought of running off to my parents' house. But Dad never brought another woman into your bed." There was silence. "I didn't come home because of a childish tantrum. I put up with it alone for a long time. The only thing I wanted when I came back was for you to ask, 'Daughter, how are you?' Not for you to ask me for money." Tears began to slide down my mother's face. I was wrong. 2 very short words, but words I had been waiting to hear for years since that day behind the kitchen wall. She wiped her tears with the sleeve of her blouse. "I've always babied him because he's the youngest, thinking he needed more help to succeed. I've covered for Ethan for everything since he was little, thinking that one day he would take care of us. And it turns out that when your father falls, the one who comes running to the hospital is you. And when he messes up, the first one they come to bang on the door for is you." I looked at her. "You don't have to hate Ethan to love me, Mom. I know, but don't think that just because I slapped him, everything will magically change. Ethan is who he is because he has always known there would be someone behind him to clean up his mess." She nodded, crying silently. I took a deep breath. I can try not to be so angry with you, but to trust you again, I need time. She swallowed hard, with effort. I'm not asking you to forget everything, daughter. I'm just asking you to let me try to fix it. I didn't hug her. Some wounds are so deep they can't be healed with a single night's hug. The only thing I did was bring her a blanket so she wouldn't get cold on the floor of my room. The next morning, she woke up very early to heat milk and prepare chocolate milk with cookies. She opened the pantry, and seeing that there was hardly any left, she took money from her wallet to go down to the supermarket. I stopped her. Leave it. I'll go down. She shook her head. No, today I'm making breakfast for my granddaughter. For the first time in a long time. She didn't call her the child or that kid. I noticed that small detail perfectly. When Clara woke up and saw her in the room, she hid behind my leg. My mother didn't force her to give her a kiss. She just served the hot bowl on the table. Eat it if you're hungry. I'll stay over here, far away. Clara looked at her for a long time and asked in a low voice, Are you going to let the bad men take my mommy? My mother's eyes welled up. No, I've made many mistakes. From now on, Grandma won't let anyone scare you. Clara didn't run to hug her, but she sat in the chair and started dipping the cookies in the cup. For me, that was already a big step. In the afternoon, my mother returned to her town. Before she left, she put a bag with eggs from a neighbor's coop and some tomatoes from her garden in my hand. Can I come up to see Clara on a weekend? Call me before you come, Mom. Yes, I'll call first. I didn't promise her that everything would go back to how it was before. When a relationship breaks at such a deep level, it doesn't just come back together like a broken cup. You can only build a new way of living together with clear boundaries, so you don't keep hurting each other. 2 days later, Julian came to pick up Clara according to the visitation schedule. The little girl didn't want to go, but I told her she had to go with her father for a few hours, and then she would come back home. If you need anything, let me know. Julian was waiting at the door and was surprised to see my mother leaving with the bags. She came for a visit. My mother answered him very dryly. Yes? Take the child and don't take your eyes off her. Julian was uncomfortable with her distant way of speaking, but kept quiet. That same afternoon, they brought Clara back almost an hour late. The little girl got out of the car with swollen eyes. She didn't want to say goodbye to Julian and threw herself into my arms. What's wrong, my love? She kept repeating, I want to go home. I looked at Julian and noticed he had been crying. What happened? It's just childish whims. Mackenzie started recording a couple of videos for Instagram. Clara didn't want to go near her and started crying. My blood boiled. What a family. Julian wrinkled his nose. Don't be so picky. Mackenzie is going to be my wife. The child has to get used to it. I took Clara to our room without asking for more explanations. A little later, Maya sent me some screenshots from her phone. On Mackenzie's Instagram stories, there was a video where only half of Clara's crying face was in focus, and below it was a written message. It's a shame that some children are taught hate and unfounded fears by adults to turn them against their own parents. Sometimes love can only be patient. I was paralyzed with rage. Mackenzie didn't mention me, but anyone who knew the story knew who it was about. She was using my daughter's tears as false evidence to play the role of the understanding stepmother. I didn't call to insult her. I saved the screenshots with the time and date, the link to the video, and asked Maya to record the screen with another phone just in case they deleted it and said it was a lie. I sent a direct message to Mackenzie. Delete the video in which my daughter's image and crying are featured immediately. You have no right to use minors to throw hints or clean up your public image. She read it and didn't reply. I sent another text to Julian. A strict ultimatum. The visitation schedule and meeting point must be strictly adhered to, with advance notice always given. Mackenzie is strictly forbidden from posting images, sounds, or videos of Clara on social media without my express written permission. Julian called me instantly. Jesus, you're going too far. I'm just defending my rights as a father. Can you even see her full face? Not seeing her full face doesn't mean she can't be recognized, and it certainly doesn't give your girlfriend the right to use the crying child as a prop for her movies. You always think everyone wants to hurt you. I looked at Clara, huddled in her corner, scared. I'm not forbidding you from being a father. What I am forbidding is you using my daughter in your disgusting game of appearances. Julian fell silent. I pronounced each word with disgust. That video needs to be deleted tonight. If something like this happens again, I will file a lawsuit to review the conditions of the visitation arrangement based on the minor's psychological well-being. 10 minutes later, Mackenzie's Instagram video had disappeared. But that same night, when someone shouted on the street near the ground floor apartment where we lived, Clara flinched, knocked over a glass of water, and clung to me, terrified. Videos can be deleted from the internet in seconds, but the fear that an adult plants in a child's mind is almost impossible to erase. After the video incident, Clara stopped asking when it was her turn to go with her father. When the phone rang and she knew it was Julian, she would keep painting as if she didn't hear it. I asked Miss Alicia to keep an eye on her. She told me that in class, she played, ate well, and took naps. But if she heard a man raise his voice nearby, she would get very scared. Children can't tell you everything that scares them, Eleanor. Sometimes they just try to hide or cling tighter to their mothers, and we adults think they've forgotten in 2 days. Hearing that left my chest tight. I had managed to force that woman to take down the video, but I couldn't give any order to turn off the terror in my daughter's head. Liam would stop by from time to time, but always keeping his distance. Sometimes he would bring his tools to fix a creaky cabinet door. Other times he would bring down a couple of his niece's storybooks for Clara. He never did it without asking me first, except for one time. At the end of the month, the daycare director informed us that they were raising the monthly extracurricular fee starting next week. My second-hand scooter had just broken down, and Clara needed expensive syrups. I was going to talk to the center to see if I could pay in installments. The next morning, Miss Alicia stopped me at the door. Eleanor, Clara's monthly fee has already been paid. Who? Liam said he came on behalf of the girl's family. In the afternoon, I asked Liam to meet for coffee near the warehouse. As soon as he sat down, he apologized. Hey, don't be mad. I just advanced it to help you out. You can pay me back when it's better for you. I opened my banking app and made an instant transfer. You have it back in your account now. Liam looked at his phone, and his smile faded. Eleanor, if I didn't ask for it, it's not about you asking for it or not. You went to her school, introduced yourself as a family member, and paid her tuition without consulting me. I knew you were in a tight spot. I just wanted to help. I know you do it with the best intentions, but when you do that, I feel like someone else is taking the wheel of my life for me again. My ex-husband believed that because he brought in the money, he was the owner of the house. My mother thought that because she gave birth to me, my money was hers. I don't want someone as good as you to fall into the same mistake by helping me. Liam looked down at his cup. I was worried you were really struggling with payments. If I'm struggling, I'll tell you. If you want to know what I need, you ask me. But don't throw me a life preserver if I haven't asked for it. He looked up, sighed, and looked me in the eyes. I'm sorry. I thought that if I did it without telling you, I would save you from having to go through the trouble of asking. It's true that my help has become another pressure. I understand. I answered him much more softly. I don't want you to come and rescue me. I need someone who respects me enough to stay by my side. From that day on, he kept his word. If the bookshelf was wobbly, he would send me a text. Do you want me to come over and look at it? If the company gave us chocolates at Christmas, he would ask if he could bring a couple to Clara. Clara called him Uncle Liam. One day, Maya was joking with the little girl and said, Clara, if you love Uncle Liam so much, just call him Dad. The little girl crossed her arms. My dad is Daddy Julian. Uncle Liam is Uncle Liam. I was afraid Liam would be offended, but he just stroked her little head. Of course, kiddo. A place for everything, and everything in its place. His attitude, never forcing any title, made me trust him a little more. One Friday, during our lunch break, I was reviewing an Excel file with Sharon when my phone rang. It was Miss Alicia. Eleanor, come quickly. Clara fell down the stairs in the courtyard. She hit her head. We're in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. She's dizzy and has vomited. My pen fell to the floor. My heart was in my throat. I shot out of my seat. Brenda called a taxi while Sharon followed with my bag. I spent the whole ride crying and praying, repeating the promise I always made to her. Mommy always comes back for you. I arrived at the emergency room of the Lurie Children's Hospital and found the teacher, pale as a ghost, covered in dust, trembling. The doctor was checking Clara's reflexes in a cubicle. What happened? She was on the ramp, but a father arrived late and started yelling like a beast at his son at the door. Clara got a huge fright, tripped, fell face first, and hit the step. Hearing that, I felt like I was going to die right there. Miss Alicia took my hand and wouldn't stop crying. Forgive me, really. I didn't blame her. It was a simple accident, and she reacted perfectly. The doctor ordered a CT scan because she had vomited, to rule out serious concussions. She came out of the X-ray room, small, with a bandage on her forehead. I ran to take her cold little hand. Mommy is here. Forgive me. I fell by accident. It's okay, my love. It's not your fault. Calm down. Liam appeared in the ER 15 minutes later. He didn't bombard me with questions. He took all my information, did the registration, paid for parking, bought water, and sat in a chair a little further away. Take a sip of water. You're shaking. I can't drink anything right now. I'll leave it here for you. When you calm down, drink it. He stayed there like a shadow. In silence, his mere presence there kept me from feeling like I was falling apart. Julian arrived more than an hour later and was not with Mackenzie. As soon as he walked in, he started raising his voice. What the hell happened to Clara? How do they take care of my daughter at that school? I'm going to sue them. I got up, grabbed his arm, and spoke through gritted teeth. Lower your voice, you idiot, she's terrified. Julian stopped in his tracks. The results said it was a minor concussion from the blow. There was no neurological damage, but she had to stay for 48 hours in pediatric observation. She entered the room a little drowsy from the sedatives. I sat next to the bed, stroking her hair, and Julian stood at the end of the room with his arms crossed. Liam, seeing Julian, preferred to go out for a while to get coffee to give us privacy. A while later, Clara opened her eyes heavily, turned her neck, and saw Julian at the other end of the room. She began to tremble from head to toe. Her lower lip vibrated, and she didn't say Dad. She extended her little arm full of bandages, desperately searching for my shirt. Mommy. I threw myself over her, surrounding her. Calm down, sweetie. Mommy is here. Clara sobbed with a thread of a voice. I was afraid those men would take you. The silence in the hospital was deafening. Julian was petrified at the foot of the bed. In that instant, he understood everything. The days he paid late, and what I told him she heard in the town. The weekends he canceled at the last second because he was going on a getaway with his girlfriend. The shouting at my door to demand money. The disgusting video of his girlfriend to pretend she was the poor victim. All the fear generated by the sum of those actions was now visible. It was crystallized in that 4-year-old girl, terrified of her own shadow. Mommy, don't go. Clara squeezed with all her might until she turned white from the tension, until exhaustion closed her eyes again. Julian looked down, turned around, and went out into the hallway. For the first time, he had no arguments to blame anyone. It wasn't the bad mother, it wasn't the useless teachers, it wasn't a bad day. Certain debts in the lives of adults cannot be settled with money. They are paid when you realize the terror you have etched into the eyes of your own children. The 48 hours on the ward were very long, but Clara began to tolerate food, and the dizziness subsided. However, she would still flinch if she heard the metallic carts of the nurses passing in the pediatric hallway. The neurologist discharged us, advising, do not expose her to loud noises or stressful situations for a couple of months. Let her rest. My mother, Rose, came from our hometown as soon as she could by bus. She brought a homemade, very thick broth in a glass container and 3 new pajamas bought right there. She didn't try to force the situation. She sat in an armchair at a certain distance and asked timidly, Clara, have a little of Grandma's broth. It will do you good to regain your strength, my girl. Clara looked at me, seeking my approval. I nodded slightly, and she took a few spoonfuls. My mother was so moved that she turned around so we wouldn't see her cry, as if she felt that total forgiveness had fallen from the sky. My father called on FaceTime from home. His recovery had gone wonderfully, and he was beginning to patiently articulate single words. G, T, we, L. Clara managed a smile on her chapped lips. You get well soon too, Grandpa Thomas. It was her first smile since the fall. I looked out the window at the buildings of Chicago and wiped away a furtive tear. That afternoon, Julian called me out of the room into the pediatric hallway. His shirt was completely wrinkled, and he had 2 dark bags under his eyes. Eleanor, I'm sorry. I was such an idiot to believe that as long as there was a deposit at the end of the month, I was being a father. When she said she was afraid they would take you, I couldn't. I realized the constant fear I've kept you both in. You realized it late, but better late than never. I took out a printed paper. These are the new visitation schedules and rules. Exact drop-offs and pickups at a neutral point. You will not take her to sleep in places she doesn't know, or to the houses of recent girlfriends until you talk to me first. And above all, if Mackenzie posts a single millisecond of my daughter on social media, the agreement is legally broken. If you want me to trust you as a father, the first rule is to keep your word. Julian read the rules very slowly, nodded, and looked at the floor. Weeks later, I found out that he forced Mackenzie to delete any trace or hint referring to Clara from all her internet accounts and made it very clear that she would not have contact with the child in this initial stage of trauma recovery. Mackenzie's response was the typical, "I've won, I don't want to get into wars with that hysterical woman." And honestly, I didn't care at all what that woman thought. I hadn't won any contest for who gets to keep a man. I had won the right to push someone toxic away and protect the dignity of my tears and my daughters from becoming a frivolous spectacle. Clara came home on a Tuesday. I found her help from a specialized child psychologist recommended by the school, who had her office on the south side of Chicago. Through play, Clara learned how to give shape to her fears, and I learned that you have to listen to children with patience. When she told me, "Mom, I feel like going with Dad," I let her go. I never forced her to go to the park with him if she didn't want to, and I didn't stop her from seeing him when she asked to. Healing a child's heart is not about forcibly erasing the one who hurt them from their mind. It's about building the certainty for that child that she and herself will always be safe and loved unconditionally. A year later, Brenda summoned me to the Central Human Resources office. The company was going to open a huge robotic logistics warehouse in a nearby state and wanted me to be the supervisor of the initial administrative team. "I would like you to lead this new shift, Eleanor. The salary is $4,500 a month, plus performance bonuses and better benefits." The offer excited me, but I was worried about changing apartments, neighborhoods, and finding a new school. A promotion is great, but I have to think about the changes for the child. Brenda adjusted her glasses. "Eleanor, having stability doesn't mean getting stuck in the fear of moving forward. The best stability for a child is knowing that wherever she is, she has her mother standing tall and that her mother will always come home." I accepted the offer. That night, I prepared a surprise for Clara. "Clara, do you think it would be cool to have a room with a wall just for you to paint on?" Clara nodded enthusiastically. "And a new bed for the rabbit?" In a few weeks, we moved and went to a 400 square foot apartment near our work. It wasn't a palace, but it was white, spacious, had a large window, and above all, a whole table dedicated to her school crafts. On the afternoon of the move, my mother drove over. She brought me peppers from the garden, tomatoes, and a pot overflowing with fresh basil. She asked me with great tact, "Do you mind if I put the basil on your terrace or at the entrance if that's okay with you?" I answered with a half smile. "Yes, Mom. Leave it there where it gets good sun." That small act of consulting me confirmed that her respect for boundaries was still alive. Clara couldn't stop running around the open-plan living room. "Mom, look, there are no more leaks like in the old house." I hugged her and kissed the top of her head. "No, sweetie. In this place, no one kicks us out or gets us wet with rain anymore." I became the primary warehouse manager months later. Sharon and I began to respect each other as inseparable partners in accounting struggles, and Brenda, although still as tough, would occasionally ask for operational advice on my department. Ethan, the scoundrel of a brother, sold his phone and worked extra shifts as a duct installer, slowly paying off each of the usurious arrears. My mother never gave him another dollar behind my back. As she herself said, "You do the crime, you do the time. That's how you learn what life is, boy." I had given him a chance. It wasn't blind trust all at once, but the door wasn't completely closed. My father, in his physical recovery, had a hard time constructing complete sentences, but one Sunday he visited us, took my hand on the vinyl tablecloth, and said without much stuttering, "Eleanor, eat together." I had to bite my lips and quickly wipe my tears. Liam remained firm and calm in his place, always respecting our rhythms, and letting Clara continue to set her own pace without my impositions. One November afternoon, leaning on the railing of my terrace and watching the sunset, he asked me in a low voice, "Would it be okay with you if in this new stage, I continued to be by your side a little more seriously?" I looked him straight in the eye and answered with complete honesty, "Liam, I no longer need heroes or people who come to fix my misfortunes. I need someone who loves me, who respects my daughter, and who never assumes that by supporting me, my voice and my decisions take a back seat." Liam nodded without a moment's hesitation. "Understood. I'll stay by your side, knowing my role well, without trying to change yours." Clara still called him Uncle Liam. It wasn't necessary to erase anything in a flash to add new color. Last week, she came home from school with a huge drawing. The two of us were at the table cooking, Grandma Rose in the corner, and under the new pot on the terrace, Liam. Far away, she drew the father of the family behind the fence, with whom she now spent some afternoons, but around whom the universe of her childhood fears no longer revolved. I thought for a very bitter time that the day a wedding collapsed meant crawling in absolute pity. Over the years, I have found that the greatest failure is not in picking up the papers in a courthouse or in scrubbing dirty pans at 5 a.m. to feed a child. The real tragedy is when a person, for fear of social ridicule or lack of money, indefinitely allows those who broke them to continue controlling the thermostat of their personal happiness, snatching away their resources, their voice, their role as a mother, and their most valuable tools. The real balance that any mother in that divorce situation must cling to is not only the bank account to pay for groceries, but her legally protected papers in a drawer, her dignity in the face of moral blackmailers, and protecting the small corner where a child's heart lives from emotional aggression. One must forgive one's own blood to walk lighter. But forgiving does not, under any circumstances, mean handing over the keys to your peace so they can settle in and live off perpetual emotional blackmail. I understood this while looking at the newly single mother I met a few days ago, with red eyes, who came looking for help. I poured her a glass of water, gave her a list of city social resources, told her about the best-rated public daycare, and repeated the words that saved me. You don't have to start from scratch on your own. You are the result of much patience, of all the sleepless nights, and you come out armed with an inexhaustible resilience for your child. You see, you've just arrived at your real beginning. And honestly, that's the true starting line, which is very different. I returned to my apartment, a potted hydrangea in the middle of my small oasis, the smell of Grandma's pot roast, the children's drawings on recycled paper, and the brutal certainty that no one else's hurricane had permission to drench us anymore.